Joe Pullman here from craftworking.net. In this video I'm going to go over some networking fundamentals and information you're going to need when putting together your data center. If you're a normal consumer and using residential grade internet service, you've got a modem from Verizon or AT&T or Time Warner, and that's one side's connected to the internet and the other side's connected to your AP, if the AP is not already into the modem. And then you're wireless throughout the house. Some of you may have a switch, and some of your equipment might be wired in. And this is all hardware, so basically you've got an Ethernet, either wireless Wi-Fi going into your laptop or your desktop with a Wi-Fi card in it, and that's how you connect to the internet. In VMware and in any virtualized environment, that kind of goes away unless you actually have a host with a Wi-Fi card in it, which is possible but not normally done. Everything is wired, so you're going to have some sort of switch or networking gear to connect the modem to your VMware host. And this is where things can get a little complicated, because this is, getting away from the normal home networking that you are kind of used to. So the first thing is read up on networking fundamentals. Lots of YouTube videos out there, books on basic networking. But basically what you're going to need is you're going to need a switch. Now, me being a network guy and a very big fan of Cisco, I'll tell you that go to eBay and get yourself like a 3550 or 3560 switch from Cisco. On eBay they're cheap. They're less than $100. They're fully managed, and they've got all the features that you possibly could want. But the thing is that you're going to have to learn, if you don't already know, you're going to have some networking knowledge to set up VLANs and basically trunking. If you're going to do bonding, you're doing some lagging of your Ethernet back to your SAN or your host, for example. So the other thing is when you get into this, you're going to find out your network is going to expand quite dramatically. You're going to want to connect your host to your SAN. You're going to want to connect it to your firewall. You don't really want to use the firewall in your modem. It's basically horrible. It sucks. It's adequate for most things, but now you're going to run virtual machines. You're going to want to do port forwarding. You're going to want to do start to get into some advanced networking concepts. So what I'm basically telling you to do is basically you're going to have some networking knowledge. That being said, also you're going to have to basically deploy this network. So as far as the cabling is concerned, you've got two choices. You can go out and buy yourself pre-built cables. Very expensive. It's not uncommon to have, let's say, a 3-foot cable cost $10. So what you want to basically do is start building your own cables, learning how to build an Ethernet cable. It's not too difficult. You can buy rolls of Cat 5e or Cat 6 cable now relatively cheaply. I just spent $50 on a 1,000-foot roll of Cat 6. Another purchase I bought off of eBay. And then a tool kit, which will cost another $20 or $30 to get all of the tools you're going to need to build a cable, and of course the RJ45 plugs. I just bought 100 of them for like less than $6. So it's going to be very more cheaper to build your cables than to go out and buy them pre-built. So something to look into when you're putting together a network. But for the basics, you're going to start putting in a network to support your data center. But like I say, you can get a 24-port Cisco fully managed switch off of eBay used for less than $100. There's a lot of information out there on how to configure it. By far, Cisco has the best documentation. So if you want to know how to configure the switch that you've never seen before, cisco.com, and you can search and find how to configure the switch to do what you need it to do. As far as the network topologies go, that's widely varies widely. It's kind of no two networks are the same. You again research, do some reading on how to hook up your different nodes, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to want to have one box talk to another. So when you get into this, and you'll get a feeling when I start explaining to you when I do it, the videos on the upgrade on how my network is put together, and you will kind of get a sense and a feel of how to do it. But basically what you're going to want to do is, let's say you're saying your iSCSI network is going to be different from your VMware network, which is going to be different from your internet network, because you're going to probably want to put in a firewall. So you'll have to look at designing this and putting together a network that'll work for you, and hopefully not make it too complicated like mine is. So, but something to consider. I would not go out and buy a Nexus 7000 to do this. You don't need it, even though that, if you read up on Cisco's data center, it's like Nexus, and you need a Nexus 7K. Nexus 7Ks will cost you retail in excess of $50, $60, $80,000. They'll go up to well over $200,000 for a switch. You do not need that. All you need is a used Cisco switch off of eBay, and it'll work for you just fine. And the other adage is you want to do as much switching as possible, and you don't want to do too much routing, so you don't want to go out and buy a router to do this. So you're going to want to switch. And the other thing in the switch is you got to consider is, do I want to do 10 gig? 10 gig switching will just exponentiate the cost of your network unbelievably. For example, if you buy a 24 port or 12 port 10 gig 3760 or 3650 10 gig, those off of eBay are well north of $4,000, $5,000. Then you need the 10 gig on top, or the 1 gig on top of that, to connect your access points, your modems, and any other equipment you have, because that's not going to be 10 gig. And that module $2,000, $3,000, and you can stack them, connect them together for one logical switch. So one switch setup may cost $10,000. So it's something to consider when you're looking at a 10 gig solution. The other thing, if you got the space, you can get yourself a modular switch where you can add line cards or modules that will do 10 gig and the 1 gig, and this will lower the price dramatically. Personally, I've got a Cisco Catalyst 6500 six slot. It's got 2 SUP modules, or supervisor two processor modules, 48 port 1 gig and 2 4-port 10 gig modules. Power supplies, chassis, I spent less than $2,000 for. But the thing is very loud, very hot, and very big, and very heavy. So something you don't want to sit there and put in the living room. But like I say, in the upcoming videos, I'll go into in-depth on how I set my network up, so you can get an idea of what's all involved. The other thing is I've deployed a couple of Cisco firewalls, and I'll get into the pros and cons of what platform to look at when you get into firewalling. There's a bunch of solutions for firewalls out there. Cisco has a virtualized firewall called a VASA, which is, you can download an evaluation and use it, but again, these licenses can get very expensive. The hardware firewalls, an ASA firewall from used, 5500, 5510, 5515, fairly inexpensive. My personal favorite is you can put the same firewall basically on a regular router platform and spend a lot less money. The thing that you have to look at when you're looking at that kind of solution is the throughput of the router itself. This is all going to depend on your internet speed. So when we get there in subsequent videos, when I talk about the firewall itself, I'm going to talk about the platforms and the throughput and what numbers you're looking for when you're purchasing a firewall, and it all has to do with conversion from packets per second down to bits per second. So everything networking wise is in bits per second. So for example, I've got 50 megabits per second internet access with AT&T, but that needs to be converted over to packets per second because Cisco puts their throughput numbers in packets per second. And when you look at this and you're saying, oh, this thing will do 100,000 packets per second, you think that's a good thing, you do the math and you come out, oh, the thing will only do 20 megabits per second. This happened to me when I was putting my first firewall together. I hooked it up and did a speed test. I was getting 11, 15 megabits per second and going, what the hell? And when I went back to the Cisco throughput guide and found out that, yeah, the throughput of the chassis itself is, 15, 20 megabit. It was actually higher. It was 30 or 40. But the more features and the more services you add to this router, DHCP, DNS, firewalling, NAT, the speed drops every time you add a feature. So by the time I got done with my firewall and doing the things I wanted to do with it, I was down to about 11 megabits per second throughput. So I had to change out my firewall to something a little better. So like I say, I will talk about that more when I get into showing you how I upgraded my network or my data center to accommodate some of this stuff. So, but anyway, the key points to this one is you're going to have to learn networking to some extent, build your own cables, and basically make the decision on how much networking throughput latency that you're going to want to do. And those, again, research is your friend. The more research you do, the less money you're going to spend and the happier you're going to be. So there's nothing worse than not doing your research, buying the wrong piece of equipment, software, whatever, and then having to change it out. So, but those are my thoughts on the networking. Again, I will go into this in depth in later videos when I start talking about upgrading my data center and showing you how I deployed it, why I deployed it, and what I did to solve the problem. So, but that's it for this video. So.